Welcome to the Non-Woke Coach podcast, the show that celebrates success without the woke. Each episode features successful people who have embraced their true nature as free, independent, exceptional beings with the capacity for well-being, rather than accepting the victimhood mindset of the woke agenda. I'm your host, Ellen McCarthy, and I'm glad you've tuned into this episode. In this episode, it's an honor to be joined by a first-generation American, U.S. Army Special Operations combat veteran, business owner, speaker, and best-selling author. Please join me in welcoming Magda Khalifa, author of the inspiring memoir, American Dream: Discipline, Resilience, Endurance, Adaptability, and Mentorship to Succeed and Win in Life. Magda, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Ellen. Thank you very much.
Magda, your inspiring story was really tied to 9/11. Could you tell us about that a little bit and let, for any of my audience who don't know you and don't know your inspiring American dream story, please tell us about that.
Sure. So everybody has something in their life that is a catalyst for the change of the trajectory in their lives. I was married and in the 90s, living in the New York City area, working in the New York City area, and living a prosperous life, if you will, very promising life. And life was good, in the 90s. And of course, one day woke up and the world had changed, literally. My husband at the time, we're not married anymore, but who I was married to, he worked on the 101st floor of World Trade Center 1. He wasn't there that day. They had 3 different locations, but unfortunately lost, 177 coworkers. And obviously we all know the turn of events that happened that day when America was attacked. So living through all of that just was a game changer for me. And I knew I needed to do something. So I left my career of being in what we call, IT professional, which was information technology professional back then. That was the term. But I was a tech person. I basically worked the gamut of the industry back then, but said goodbye to that and joined the U.S. Army.
That is so brave. And when we were talking before the podcast, I think I shared with you that I worked in Tower 2 of the World Trade Center, and I was there on 9/11, and I'm having trouble with words to express how grateful I am to you and to those who signed up and really stepped up for America to fight the enemy. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ellen. And so many people stepped up. And that's the thing. Everybody who was old enough to live through it remembers the unity that we had in our country and the brave efforts of the first responders and so many others who were involved in the immediate, days and aftermath of that terrible attack, and in the years afterward and the years since in the global war on terror. So that was an all-out effort, on behalf of everybody who remembers that day and decided to do something about it, whether it was that day or a few days later or in the years ahead. But that was definitely a game changer for our country.
No, absolutely. And when you came back, you faced some challenges. I'm interested in hearing about that because I love celebrating the success of especially American women in this day and age when women are being erased by the woke agenda. It's so good to really celebrate how other women have overcome the challenges. So tell us a little bit about when you came back from your two tours of service in Iraq, right?
Yes. I served 2004 and then 2006 to 2007. So when I returned home and got off of active duty, that was the real challenge. That was, walking into an unknown area that I had not thought about in advance. What now? What next? And what's going on? Because that's when the health issues started to kick in. It was different when you were there, every day, like bad things happen, but you just continue mission. You just keep driving on. And now it was like, come home and now what? What are you going to do? And this is something that a lot of veterans face even today. And but certainly back then, because everything happened so quickly. Of course, nobody saw this coming, but there weren't resources necessarily in place that maybe exist today. Um, Talking about from, on all aspects. We didn't have the nonprofits that understood what were some of the challenges and health issues that we as service members were facing, after serving in those theaters, Iraq, Afghanistan, also Horn of Africa, Southeast Asia. I mean, there were a lot of different, operations going on at all times, and obviously continue till today. But the whole point is, I came home. Now what? Now what? I'm separated from the people I served with, and then I could not connect and relate to this world, the civilians. It's almost like being, I was in a vacuum for a few years and came out of this vacuum. Now what? What do you do? How, you look at the climate around you. The world's progressed and changed and moved on, but in many ways you're like, well, I'm changed. I'm different now, and that's not a bad thing, but you're trying to figure out, like, let's say you started off as a circle and now you're a square, and you're trying to find your peg on the pegboard and how to fit in with society. And that really was the challenge, trying to figure that out. I will add, as a woman, I was part of, along with my sister veterans, who joined and served and deployed in those early years of the war. We were really the first wave, if you will, of or mass wave of women who were out there in combat operations doing a variety of jobs. And so, okay, that's fine, so we came back, but like, we didn't have each other, we weren't organized. So there were probably a different set of issues that as a woman you deal with that you didn't have answers for. So you had to figure it out. You had to, there wasn't somebody I could call who had been through it 2 years prior and kind of had some wisdom or some advice, or that I could look up to and see what she was doing to, assimilate back into the next chapter in life, So I had to figure it out. So I did. I mean, it took a while, but I did. And I think I did so successfully over the course of a long period of time, which is one of the reasons I wrote the book. Not just for, the military or for veterans or for anybody who's been to war, or for women, for anybody who's been through any kind of struggle where you come to a point where you have to figure your way forth. That's not a bad thing, because I believe God puts you where you need to be. And I can accept the fact that, I lost a lot of years of my life playing small and being, reclusive and suffering in silence. And I understand the reasons why I became that way, or, was that way. But I was able to reverse that because I wanted to change, and I never gave up on that. And I never hit that easy button to turn to, we'll say, drugs, alcohol, prescription medications, anything like that, to escape what I was experiencing, be it physical or in my mind. Like, I just refused to do that. That to me was not an option. So as a result, you create these conditions where, with a high bar that have to be met. And guess what I did? I met those and I exceeded those. I pushed through. I didn't let life take control of me. I mean, it did initially, but then I learned how to take control of life right back.
And your story is so inspiring. In the book, you talk about when you came back home, you experienced some challenge, not only with the Marine, your husband, but with your family, with your parents. So, um, how did you work through that? Because, we can all go through, it doesn't have to be the change of coming back from war, but we all go through changes in our lives, and we're on our own path. And like you said, nobody has control over you but you, unless you let them. So tell us a little bit about that, and maybe a little bit about your background, at growing up, the child of immigrants in New Jersey, and how that was for you, and set the foundation. In the book, you talk about your parents telling you you can be anything you want to be. My parents told me that too, and I'm an adopted child, so it always resonates with me. And when I hear somebody else's parents tell them that, it's just the connection there. So our audience and I am interested in your experiences there.
Sure. So, my father was the one who set the bar high, and he would say things, and I talked about this in the book. He said, "Look, I came over here to this country when I was 30. You were born here. You have no excuses. You can achieve, do anything you want to do." So I got that message early on. And my mom, she was the one who set the tone, if you will. Like, she was in no excuses, take responsibility, personal accountability type of person. So the combination of the messaging from both of them kind of made me who I was. And so ironically, when I did come home, yes, I got a divorce, so that settled that issue. I mean, that was, you know, in the works and whatnot while I was deployed. And so that resolved that. But as far as, people talk about support networks, and, one would think the family of person who deployed would be supportive, and they were in some ways, but in the ways that I needed them to be, they weren't, and I don't blame them for that because I don't think they knew how to be. So I'll take responsibility for that, but I probably could not articulate how I needed them to be for me. But in all honesty, even if I did, I don't think they would have been there for me. So I had to figure things out on my own. So again, going back to the way I was raised, like personal responsibility, you have a problem, you fix it yourself. Don't look to others to fix things for you. That existed. And I think that's a bit of what gave me the impetus to keep driving forth, even in the worst days. It's like, gotta fix it. Gotta fix it yourself. Like, you cannot rely on anybody else to fix your problems. Like, nobody can fix your problems. You have to fix them yourself. And I think that acceptance of realizing that is so important for anybody that's going through any challenge, that wants to move past the challenge and not play victim to the challenge. Now, did I instantly have answers? Of course not. Like I said, it was about a 10-year journey to discover them, but because I was open to finding them, maybe not actively pursuing that in the beginning, but I knew if something presented, if the right opportunity presented itself for me to get out of my rut, out of my situation, I would certainly go after it. So it's just that shift in thinking that really sets you up for success or failure. I think, or I know at this point in life, we have to go through the process. We have to go through the pain. We have to go through the suffering sometimes for a bigger reason that may not be revealed to us right away. But at the same point, you have to determine, as I wrote in the book, are you fixed minded? Or are you growth minded? Like, do you want to accept that, you may need to change something about yourself or about what you're doing? Or are you just going to just stay in your little box and do what you've always done and not change? So that little shift, which again, I credit my parents for giving me that seed, if you will, while I was growing up as a child, while I was impressionable. So even though in this, in my story, like, they weren't there for me in the way I needed them when I came back from war and got divorced, and, they sided with it. Yeah, it was crazy. And I was so alone, it's just like, what do I do? What do you do? Like, there were, I don't know, I made it through. So boom, that's success. And that's, again,
Yes.
another reason I share this story, to show, hey, you could do it. Like, and that applies across the board, no matter what the struggle is. So if someone's been through something even much worse than anything I've been through, like if somebody's been through abuse, or just mistreatment of that kind, sure, it's horrible, it's terrible, but, and yes, you were, victimized at those moments, but how are you going to take control of that and take control of your life and not let that hold you back from leading the best life you are meant to be leading, and potentially, more than likely, becoming a person you never even imagined, and that's powerful. And that's something, obviously we're not taught about it in school. And, how many, I don't know, I'm not a parent, but, like, I don't know, how many parents are at that point where they could articulate that and teach that to their children. I mean, a lot of great parents out there, that message is not necessarily emphasized or made clear to people that, hey, you're going to go through something in your life at some point, right? At some point, you're probably not going to see it coming. It's probably going to rock your world. And you're going to look around and realize you're alone. You have no support potentially, or the people that want to support and help you through this are not able to for whatever reason. You're going to have to depend on yourself. And that innate capability of solving problems for yourself is invaluable. So that's something we all have the capability within ourselves, but you have to tap into it. And the sooner people realize that, the better off they're going to be. And it sets you up for success in any other challenge you go through in life, right? When you go through anything rough, right, and you come through it, you have more confidence. You have confidence in your ability to take control of the situation. You have confidence in what your capability is and what you are capable of doing and how you're able to handle things. So for people who have an easy life, I feel bad for them because they haven't been tested yet. So to those people who maybe fit in that category and are hearing this message now, I would say seek discomfort, go out there and do something that is going to challenge you and see how you respond. And so what if you fail? Like, just keep going, keep growing, really is the message. And for those that have hit that point where they've encountered something that totally rocks their world and they're still going through it, well, hopefully this message resonates that, hey, I've been there too. And it may not be overnight. In fact, it probably won't be overnight, but trust the process, keep your faith, and you'll be able to go through it and emerge victorious in the end.
I totally agree. When I talk with, actually in my life, I talk about the pivot. And you encounter those challenges, those things that just come at you, and you just take a breath, and actually you can appreciate them for having you realize, hey, I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel this way, and how do I get there? And that's the pivot.
Yeah.
And it all comes that from, I talk about connecting, defining, and pivoting. Connecting with God, with your creator. If you don't believe in God, with just whatever you believe in as your higher source, and who you truly are. We're all made in the image of in the likeness of our creator. That's our true nature. And then defining who you are and what you want and what feels good to you. And then that pivot, releasing what doesn't feel good to you and what doesn't serve you, and pivoting back to connection and defining and refining. So it's I think it's the same message. And you talk in your book about the freedom triangle
Yes.
and what that is. So I'm interested in your sharing with the audience a little more about the freedom triangle.
So that's the framework that I present to people that encapsulated what I went through and identified as the three main areas that I needed to fix within my life to fix my problems and emerge and to finally find the pinnacle of freedom triangle, which encompasses personal control of your life, personal freedom for what held you back in the past, and a sense of inner peace from all of that as well. So regardless of the turmoil, excuse me, that that you find yourself in, once you find that freedom triangle, you can get through it. It's like it's there, and it's there, and it's not going anywhere, and you found it yourself. No one delivered it or served it to you. So freedom triangle is based on 3 points: time freedom, health freedom, and mind freedom. And without these three things in place, you're not going to be able to get to that place of finding that inner peace and personal freedom and having true control of your life and yourself. And when I say true control, I mean, obviously we don't know what challenges the next day is going to bring, but if you know who you are, you legitimately know who you are, and you understand that thoroughly better than anyone else, and you're very well aware of it, you're going to get through anything because you know exactly what you're going to do. And that's powerful.
No, it's so empowering and powerful and impactful. I think so many of us get stuck in the comfort of the victimhood and the complaining and talking, oh, I've gone through this and this and this and this and this, and you just get get stuck in like comfortable in your discomfort, and you don't realize that you can get yourself out of it through something like the freedom triangle or connect, define, and pivot. But you just get stuck in the comfort of discomfort.
Well, that's a choice.
You know?
That's a
Yeah. You,
choice. And people are either going to choose, hey, I'm going to stay stuck and I'm going to wait and hope that someone's going to solve things for me, or they could be the kind of person that's going to seek to solve it themselves, like we
but
spoke.
I think
Mhm.
no, the impact of your book is that they may not realize that they have a choice. So your story and your inspiration shows them, yeah, you can choose to get out of it, you know?
Exactly, and that's what I mentioned. Like nobody, this isn't really taught. It's not a message that's really. But I think it should be now because the world's changed. There's no question. The past. I wrote the
Yep.
book, published it October 2019. What 6 months later, the world changed tremendously in a way that it just defined a time period in history, right? And we've seen the fallout and the continuous fallout, if you will, from that change. And a lot has been revealed as well. And then couple that with technology and the integration of technology in our lives and how much that has been a factor, good, bad, or indifferent in all of this. But the world is a lot different than when you and I grew up. And
Yep.
for anyone that can remember, as an adult, um, the years before, right? Like totally different. So that being said, I didn't know it at the time, but by publishing that book, and looking at the timestamp of it, October 2019, like yes, I will say it does serve as a primer to folks who
Yeah.
are maybe coming of age now. Now they're adults or young adults, and they're lost. And I get it. I get why they're lost, and it's not their fault. It's environment conditions that are out there, and look at the challenges that they're contending with, far different than what we had to contend with, growing up. And so I'm glad I wrote it. I'm glad I wrote it because it's there and it can help serve as a guide for anyone that finds themselves in that situation where they again went through something or are going through something. They don't know how to get out of it. They can't relate to anyone or find anyone, or for whatever reason, to give them some guidance and advice, and for any number of reasons, right? But they know that they don't want to stay in, stuck where they're at right now. So here's something that can help, something that could serve them.
No, it's great. And you talked about in the book and here how you left behind a profitable, comfortable life to join the army. And now you've started Triangle Fragrance, right? So you're an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a successful businesswoman, and you talk about your mentors in the book. So tell us more about your made in the USA modern luxury fragrance, Triangle Fragrance,
Mhm.
and your journey to being who you are now and living the best life you can.
So the reason I started Triangle Fragrance is because shortly after publishing the book and introducing Freedom Triangle to the world, I realized not everybody's going to read a book or get through to the end to really capture the value there. And I believe in it so much. So I realized I needed a physical product. And it had to be something for men and for women, something that could ultimately serve people worldwide. A physical product that could introduce people to the power of Freedom Triangle. And if they wanted to dig further, they can always go back and read the book. They can listen to these podcasts or whatever the case is, right? They could seek more. That could be a launching ground for their growth journey. So that's where I came up with the idea of Triangle Fragrance, luxury scents for men and for women. Now, each of the bottles have a Triangle Fragrance collector's card, and that specifically ties in with a point in the Freedom Triangle. So the idea is, someone will wake up, they'll spray the scent, then they'll read the card, beautiful collector's card. Maybe they put it in their wallet, maybe they put it in their bathroom mirror, by their coffee machine, but it's there for them. And the scents are long lasting. So coincidentally, as they go throughout the day, maybe they'll start associating these scents with the statements, the affirmations on the card that are not just pretty affirmations. I mean, it's a deep story. It's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. And most people are surprised how interconnected all of this is. It's very intentional. So, but I understand, you know, the mind of people, like I understand, like maybe if I was introduced to a book that could have helped me back in 2007 when I came back from war and was at my lowest point, I would have started reading it, but I may not have gotten to the end of it. So fragrance, it's designed, not everybody wears it every day, but if they so choose, they can wear it at any time, day or night, spray your pillow before you go to sleep, whatever the case is. And I realize not everything is going to connect with everyone, but here's just a different, creative, but intentional way of serving others the power of Freedom Triangle. So I launched the business January 2020, so just a few months after the book came out. And that's what I've been consumed with for the past 4 years. This is a 4-year anniversary. Building a luxury retail brand, mind you, in a very interesting time. So it literally launched. I was living in the New York City area at the time, and 2 months later, lockdown, like severe lockdown. I was on the Hudson River, looking outside, and I couldn't believe how clear the skies were over New York City. And I lived in that area, grew up there, because there was no movement, no traffic. Everything was locked down. And I knew I had to get out of that area because how could you build a business and thrive? And for my health and well-being, I needed to move on. So I did relocate to Florida later on that year. But that was an external challenge, but I had already found my Freedom Triangle, so I knew what I needed to do, and that's what I let guide me, and it made a difficult decision easy, or clear. I had clarity, which happens to be the name of one of my sons. So that being said, yes, that's what I've been working on, and bringing the value, the power of Freedom Triangle to people worldwide through the power of Freedom Triangle infused into these beautiful scents, through the story, through the collector's card. It's all tied in.
That's absolutely great and inspiring. And there's four fragrances altogether, two for men,
Right.
two for women. Is that right?
And two unisex. There are two unisex
Okay.
scents. The blue line has peace, which stands for inner peace, and freedom, which stands for personal freedom. Again, the pinnacle of the Freedom Triangle is mind freedom. So you have inner peace and personal freedom. So it literally takes you through the journey. The red line ties to time freedom, the white line ties through health freedom, and then the blue line ties to mind freedom. So it's all very deliberate and intentional. And as people learn more about Freedom Triangle and study it and apply it in their lives, it all makes sense, pun intended.
And congratulations on the 4-year anniversary. That's just awesome. You posted a few days ago about your mentorship and how the success of your business and how it's grown. So talk a little bit about that, because I just applaud you for being so successful with something that you're so passionate about and that's helping so many people.
Well, it's not that I'm passionate about fragrance. I'm passionate about freedom. Okay. And yes, given the world we live in right now, it could be taken on many levels. But freedom is important. But really, Freedom Triangle is about personal freedom, because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter if you're a free person in a Western country, or you're a not so free person in a less than free country elsewhere, right? It doesn't matter if you don't have that personal freedom. You're going to be a slave to something that's holding you back. So that's the bottom line. It's ultimately about personal freedom. So I started having mentors, or allowing mentors to myself to listen to mentors, business mentors, um, probably about 7, 8 years ago now. And the most impactful person has been Grant Cardone, who, I guess it's been about 5 years now. I started listening to him, and it connected with me because what he says, he doesn't mince words. and it makes sense. And while a lot of it is, business fundamentals and advice, to obviously he's very, super successful. So I'm going to listen there. And I've applied that in my business, but it's also to the, what I find, what I'm attracted to is the fact that a lot of it is also based upon um, personal fundamentals of how, to view things in life. And I think that's very important. And I had already kind of arrived at that point. So I'm in alignment with what he talks about. So from a business standpoint, when I entered his ecosystem, I did not have this business. In fact, I did not even have the book. I was still a very, very, very private person. I had not shared my story. And I talk about in the book how, I went through and Pete Vargas, the stage whisperer, brought it out in me. And I realized no one said go write a book, but I realized I needed to do that. I needed to start off with the story. Like I had so much to share and there was value and I could serve others. So that was a huge mind shift. And I felt the best way to deliver it was through the book. And then boom, as soon as I finished the book, it became clear soon afterwards that I needed to take this to the next level and bring people to the message in the book, Freedom Triangle, finding your freedom triangle through the power of product. So that's an example of how having, being in the right mindset and having the right mentors that are, reinforcing these fundamentals, right? About getting through life and being successful. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about like, oh, you are a business owner or an employee and you're wealthy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, successful in life, as in you have control of your life, because you can find a poor person who has that control of their life. And I guarantee they have more peace than someone who is wealthy and just has to come to things that do not control their lives. We see that all the time, right? So one feeds into the other. So yeah, he's been very influential to me. And then of course his partner, Brandon Dawson, again, from the business standpoint, like I know what I need to focus on, what I need to prioritize. And as a result of that, I've been able to grow a Triangle Fragrance and, my graph lines go up, for top line revenue, net sales. And that's important because that shows the health of a business. Now, granted, it's still small. I'm still a solopreneur. I don't take a paycheck. I am in debt, all those things apply. But my business is growing and the stats show that, and that's really an indicator of doing things correctly.
Absolutely. And one thing that resonated, another thing that resonated from your book is when you talk about mentors, it's not just, a lot of people feel like, well, a mentor will come into my life. No, you went out there and you found mentors. It's that taking control again.
Yes and no.
And
I mean,
that's important.
the right ones may appear in the process of you doing something, because it's like when you're looking for your first home, for instance, all of a sudden now you start noticing the for sale signs where before you never really paid attention to that.
Yep.
So they may have always been there and you just didn't know it, but now that you're actively seeking whatever it is, growth. I was seeking growth. I wasn't seeking a mentor. I was seeking growth. But in the process of seeking growth and solving my own problems, the mentors appeared.
Yep.
As Jared Glant, he's a president of Cardone Enterprises, says when the student is ready, the mentor will appear. And it's true. It's so true.
Yep.
I was finally ready because years before I wasn't ready. I was still working on other parts of myself that needed to be worked on. So
Yep. When you're ready, you attract what you want. You really do. When you have that mindset, that positive mindset, that abundance mindset, and it does. It manifests. So.
100%.
Well, Magda, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today. I absolutely love sharing the success of patriotic women and how you shared the challenges that you've overcome and the success. I always talk about success as achieving a desired outcome. Like you said, it doesn't have to mean great wealth and power. It can, but it doesn't. It's just really what you want to achieve. And you are a true American success story. Our audience can find your fragrances at trianglefragrance.com.
Yes.
They can get your book at americandreamthebook.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they can connect with you at magdakhalifa.com and on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. Did I get it all?
Yes, thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, and I've enjoyed connecting with you as well.
Me too. Thank you so much for making the time. That's it for this episode of the Non-Woke Coach podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please follow the show on your favorite podcast listening platform so you don't miss the next episode. While you're at it, please sign up to our email list at linktree/non-woke-coach, where you can also download free success resources and learn more about my private coaching packages. I'm Ellen McCarthy, the Non-Woke Coach, and until next time, keep embracing your true successful nature.